Okay, now we are going to be looking at adding and subtracting rationals. We just worked with multiplying and dividing where we found out that there's really no rules. We just factor everything and then cancel what matches top and bottom. Now with adding and subtracting, if you remember back to just basic fractions, you always have to have something in common when you add or subtract. So in this case, we're going to be looking at common denominators and how to find those with these binomials. All right, so on page 207 in your workbook, you're going to see just a couple of notes here, and then I've added in these two practice problems that we're going to work. All right, so this would be the question in this case. They're just trying to show you what to do when you do have common denominators. When you have common denominators, you just leave the denominator and add the numerator. Same thing with subtraction. Keep the denominator and subtract the numerators. Okay, so in this case we have common denominators, thank goodness. So all we're going to do is keep the denominator and add the top. Now when you can, of course, you're going to add across and then you always reduce. So we're going to divide both top and bottom by 2, and my final answer would be 5 over 2x. And the next one, you're going to, again, see that we have common denominators. So we'll keep them, and then up top we would have 2x minus 5. And then I'm going to think ahead. There's nothing I can really factor and cancel, so there's really no reducing in this one. Okay, now the fun part. What happens when we don't have common denominators? And this is somewhere where you're probably going to have to stop and back up, and or just like write and then back up and watch it without writing. So this is something you kind of have to get the feel for and see lots of examples. So in this case we have two different denominators. So what they're doing is they're finding a combination of both denominators. So they end up with CD as the common. And then what happens is we figure out, okay, I multiply times D to get CD, so I have to multiply the top by D. Over here I multiply by C, so I have to multiply the top by C. And then once I have those denominators, then I can add the numerators and keep the denominator like I did in the last question. All right, so in this case, what we've got to do is first factor all denominators that need to be factored. So down here, I'm going to call this one 3x times x plus 1. That way I kind of get a good idea of what all the common denominators will be. I like to rewrite my fraction like this. And then the next part is kind of difficult. I've got to find my LCD, which is the lowest common denominator, or the least common denominator. So the least number that both 3 and 9 go into is 9. So I'm going to keep 9 as part of my denominator. We have an x and an x squared. So the least common denominator for that is going to be x squared. And it's just a combination. You're picking something that both of these things go into. And then if you notice there's an x plus 1, that means x plus 1 has to be also in my denominator. So what I'm looking at is 9x squared times x plus 1 as both denominators. And so again, that is a combination of every denominator, every piece of the denominator put together. All right, so now what we're going to do is go through and multiply what's missing. So in this case, in order to get 9x squared to match the denominator we have, we're going to have to multiply by x plus 1. That means I've got to multiply the top by x plus 1. So up here would look like 7 times x plus 1. Now on this side, the x plus 1's match. I'm looking at here to here. The x plus 1's match. So it looks like I need to multiply by 3 to get 9, and I need to multiply by x to get x squared. So up top here, I'm going to multiply by 3x. So I would have 3x squared as my top. All right, so now that I have common denominators, I can keep the denominator. And then I'm going to call this guy 7x plus 7. So now I would have 3x squared plus 7x plus 7. And I'm writing it like that in case it can be factored. Now in this case, it can't be. I could try Lizzie method. I don't think I'm going to get anything though that's going to cancel with x plus 1. All right, and here's another example where we have something that we need to factor. So down here on the bottom, I'm going to factor out 2. I'm left with x minus 1. Here we're going to have x and x, 3 and 1, and we need them both to be negative. Okay, so what we're going to notice is that to find my common denominator, it has to be, again, a combination of everything that's here. So I have to have a 2 in it, I have to have an x minus 1 in it, and I have to have an x minus 3 in it. So again, it will be a, oops, this is subtraction. This will be a combination of everything that's here. So 2 times x minus 1 times x minus 3. It's kind of a poor choice in colors. Hopefully you can see that okay. Get something a little bit brighter. All right, so then now we're going to match these up. So I have 2, x minus 1, x minus 1. So I need to multiply by x minus 3. So I'm going to multiply the top by x minus 3. Ooh. That's a hard one to get. So x plus 2 times x minus 3 will be that denominator. And then over here, let's see, we have x minus 1, x minus 1, x minus 3, x minus 3. So it looks like we're just missing 2 in this case. So I'm going to take negative 2x minus 1, and I've got to multiply that by 2. So I'm just going to put it in front. Now remember here that we're subtracting, so we know that we're going to have to distribute this negative eventually. Okay, so on the bottom, oh man, these color choices are not good. We're going to have x minus 1 times x minus 3. Again, that my common denominator is fine. Now up top, this one's going to require a lot of work. It looks like we need to fold the top. So I'm going to do that before I even put it down here. So this would be x squared minus 3x plus 2x and then minus 6. So this would be x squared minus x minus 6. And then it's going to be minus, and then I'm going to distribute here. So this would be negative 4x minus 2. And then again, all I need to do is finish multiplying the top. So that would be an x squared. I'm going to look at this as plus 4x plus 2. So I have negative x and 4x, which will be 3x. And I'm negative 6 and 2, which would be negative 4. And then, let's see, I'm trying to think okay, so it looks like in this one, I'm thinking ahead going, oh, I think I can factor the top and get it to cancel somehow. So let's see, we would have x plus 4 and x minus 1 would give us that 3. And down here on the bottom, we have this guy. And so actually it does reduce. The x minus 1's cancel. So my final answer would be x plus 4 over 2 times x minus 3. Again, feel free to back up and watch that again without writing it, just to kind of get the fluid idea of it. Okay, so what I'd like for you to do now is on page 208 in the workbook, I want you to try these 4 questions. When you're ready, you can click the next button and you'll see the answers on the last page. I don't have that, I'm not going to have that recorded because it will move automatically and I don't want it to do that. I want you to be ready for it. All right, and bring questions to me tomorrow.